little bit, man.
Good afternoon, everybody. A beautiful day, huh?
Hi.
Nice weather. I only have time for a few questions because I'm running late to a meeting, but I'm happy to take any for a moment if you have any. I think you were first.
What do you make of the senator's conversation with Frederick Garcia? What's your response?
I'm almost at a loss for words for how outrageous it is. Here's an individual, the man who has been deported to his home country of El Salvador, who has been repeatedly documented by multiple federal and state authorities to be a member of MS-13, one of the most violent and ruthless criminal organizations on planet Earth, which is now a designated foreign terrorist organization, and an individual who has been incredibly implicated in human smuggling and human trafficking, an individual who is a documented woman beater, somebody who has viciously assaulted a woman in ways that shock the human conscience. That is who the Democrat Party is going to provide aid, solace, and comfort to, not to Senator Van Hollen's own constituents, like the Morin family. Rachel Morin was viciously beaten, brutally raped, and murdered, and her mother never even got a phone call from Senator Van Hollen. Or Kayla Hamilton, a young girl who was attacked in a public restaurant, raped in the bathroom, and beaten to death and murdered by an illegal alien that Joe Biden set free into the country. None of those people elicit human sympathy from Senator Van Hollen. How broken is that man's heart? How broken is his conscience that he doesn't have even an ounce of empathy or time or concern to share with those families? Or how many of his citizen constituents have been killed by the fentanyl that Joe Biden allowed into this country? By the cartels that made a fortune off of human trafficking and smuggling into this country? Or the children in his state that cannot even get a good education or good health care because of the mass migration that has occurred into his state? None of that concerns him in the least. No, his heart is reserved for an illegal alien who's a member of a foreign terrorist organization. I'm beyond appalled.
Stephen, can you confirm if the head of the IRS was removed from his position and that taking over the
I don't have any update on the IRS right now, but as soon as we have one, we'll get it to you. Any other questions?
What about your own power? What can we foresee? What you can foresee happening?
Well, the president has been very, very clear in his criticisms and disappointment, and he said it perfectly. Nothing to add to what the president said on that important subject.
Mr. Miller, Letitia James says the allegations against her are nothing more than a revenge tour by the Trump administration. What's your response?
My response is that Letitia James is one of the most corrupt, shameless individuals ever to hold public office. She's guilty not only of those crimes, but of countless more crimes by using and abusing her public office to try to persecute an innocent man, depriving him of his rights, engaging in a conspiracy to obstruct our election, and to overthrow our democratic processes and procedures. She is guilty of multiple significant serial criminal violations.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Has the administration had any conversations with President Bukele to potentially move Garcia to another country, since that seems to be the issue at large?
The President of the United States brought Bukele here. You all heard from him himself. His view is that this foreign terrorist is a citizen and subject of El Salvador, and Bukele's view is that it is his decision as the president of El Salvador what happens with his own citizens who are lawfully residing in his country, who've been returned to his country. And so I have nothing to add to the subject of what El Salvador wishes to do with one of its own citizens, but it's important to note that the gang that the deported individual claimed previously that he was going to be persecuted by in El Salvador no longer exists. It does not exist in El Salvador. The 18th Street Gang does not exist in El Salvador. So that fake pretense for not wanting to be deported has been completely removed and remedied and no longer exists as a matter of law or reality. I want to tell you one story while you're all here that I think is very important to illustrate for you the genuine evil of the last administration's immigration policies that, for whatever reason, our corporate press in this country never really cared to cover, and certainly elicited no outrage, no emotion from this country's political and ruling elite. But this, by the way, this is not an isolated incident. This is the kind of thing that we discover not only every day, but every hour. But it just illustrates how inhuman the policies were of the previous administration and how many thousands of lives we were saving by upholding and enforcing our laws. So there was a 14-year-old girl that we discovered who was trafficked across the border in the previous administration, stolen from her family in her home country. The Biden administration made no attempt to return her to her home country or to return her to her family in her home country or to reunify her in any way with her family in her home country. Instead, they resettled her in the United States with a so-called sponsor. That so-called sponsor, all funded by our taxpayers, this entire procedure funded by taxpayers, that so-called sponsor was himself an illegal alien. So subject to himself removal and deportation. Again, the Biden administration did not deport the sponsor, but handed the girl over to the sponsor. The sponsor claimed to be that girl's brother. He was not, in fact, her brother. The Biden administration, of course, did not attempt to verify this in any way, shape, or form, as they did not for the hundreds of thousands of minors that were placed in the hands of illegal aliens. They know they were being lied to. They didn't care they were being lied to. This individual was an illegal alien who had no familial relation with this young girl. What happened next will not surprise you, although it will sadden you. He raped the 14-year-old girl and impregnated her. So the Biden administration took a young girl, took her away from her family, brought her into the United States, resettled her with an illegal alien, 26-year-old adult male, subjected her to rape and what anyone would describe as torture. So the young girl was tortured and raped and impregnated as a result of the choices made by the Biden administration. When this case was brought to the Biden administration for prosecution, they turned it down and did not even prosecute the case. So it's evil on top of evil on top of evil. And I am not interested in moral lectures from anyone in this country, whether they be in the media or the Democrat Party or in the corporate press, about immigration policy when the left has been complicit in the greatest crimes against humanity that we have seen in God knows how many years in this country. A system that has turned human beings into fodder for the cartels and participated in the mass rape and exploitation of children and the mass murder of Americans. That's what we're fighting against, that level of evil and depravity. And if you are weak or soft or passive in the face of evil, then you will be conquered by it. And this country will be conquered by it. And we will not be a free country anymore or a safe country. We'll be a country ruled by cartels and gangs and terrorists. That's the stakes. Those are the stakes in what we are doing right now. I have time for one more question.
Mr. Miller, I wanted to ask you about,
Yes.
You mentioned Bukele and the fact that Garcia is now in El Salvador's custody. But the question is, has President Trump expressed any interest at all in seeing Garcia move to a different country? Or would he want him to stay in El Salvador? Did he discuss that with Bukele or any of his advisors, specifically with immigration?
Well, the Supreme Court has been abundantly clear when it overturned the lower court's ruling that the foreign policy of the United States cannot be compelled by district court. The view of our administration has been very clear and consistent that this man is a subject and citizen of El Salvador, and El Salvador, as a sovereign country, has informed us repeatedly and publicly that it is their desire and intention to retain custody of him. And of course, we as a U.S. government cannot forcibly retrieve him against the wishes of El Salvador. Of course, again, as we've discussed at some length in these settings, if we were to forcibly retrieve him, the irony would be is that because he's here illegally and has a deportation order, he would simply be deported the second time back to El Salvador because the withholding order that has been so much discussed is no longer valid or enforced because he's a member of a foreign terrorist organization and because the fake claim that he completely fabricated about being persecuted by a rival gang no longer exists. The gang itself no longer exists in the country. I'll take one more question.
Mr. Miller, a federal appeals judge is...
Yes.
When are we going to see accountability and consequences for Secretary of State and local officials that are violating 8 U.S.C. 1324
Smuggling, right, yeah.
Aliens?
Yeah.
As well as, isn't it kind of bizarre that Chris Van Hollen tried to smuggle and facilitate the re-entry of this illegal alien, also in violation of 8 U.S.C.
Yeah, we also haven't heard any stories about the Logan Act this time around for whatever reason. So it's a great question and a knowledgeable question. I don't get a lot of questions around here where people are citing the Immigration and Nationality Act. So that's great. You're exactly right that the sanctuary cities are engaged in multiple criminal violations: harboring, smuggling, inducing, obstructing justice, obstructing official proceedings, and many other crimes. And this is something that the Department of Justice is taking a very hard look at. I'll just say that it is my view, the view of this administration, that these cities are engaged in systemic criminal violations and that they are engaged in a scheme to nullify and obstruct the duly enacted laws of the United States of America. And I would again note, when we talk about morality, we talk about decency. Sanctuary cities shield criminal illegal aliens from removal. We repeatedly go into communities and arrest illegal aliens who were previously in custody, that they refused to turn over, that were sent back onto the street, that have subsequently raped or abused a child. I just want you to think about that for a second. You have sanctuary cities like Los Angeles, like Boston, like Chicago, where illegal aliens will be booked, arrested, placed into city or state custody, charged with serious crimes. ICE will ask them to be turned over for deportation. They will willfully release them back onto the street, obstructing federal law enforcement, doing so at a time and place of their choosing, making sure that we don't know where and when they will be set free. And then those illegal aliens will go out and take someone's son or someone's daughter and abuse and rape them. The word scandal doesn't even come close to describing the enormity of the evil that we are talking about with these policies, about repeatedly subjecting citizens on purpose, deliberately, with malice aforethought, to crimes against them and their families by individuals who by law shall be removed from this country. And we have a whole body of immigration law, by the way, the last administration shredded, that says illegal aliens shall not be allowed to enter the country, shall be detained through removal, shall not be set free, that they chose repeatedly in mass to not only ignore, but to give them parole, to give them work permits, to give them welfare, a scheme to violate our laws. You're not talking about just one time or two times or three times, millions and millions of times they engage in this scheme. So much criminality that it defies our ability to even catalog it. And the wages of that, the destruction that created, can only be measured in the tears of all the moms and dads whose kids are now dead, whether dead by drugs or dead by crime. And that doesn't even measure the impacts on our education system. I mean, we always talk about how low our test scores in this country, and no one ever talks about the fact that we have a completely open border until Donald Trump with the world, flooding our schools with students who are not even literate in the language in the countries from which they came. Destroyed our education system, destroyed our infrastructure, destroyed our healthcare system. Where do Americans go to get their cities back? Where do they go to get their lives back? Where do they go to get their lost income? How many small businesses have been closed over the years because they were competing with illegal labor? How many lives and dreams have been destroyed? The other side in this debate, this isn't a debate between two reasonable points of view. It's a debate between a political party led by Donald Trump that believes in nationhood, that believes in sovereignty, that believes in the idea that there is such a thing as citizenship and it's sacred, and a party that is literally waging war against the very idea of nationhood. And as far as they're concerned, every single American citizen who's hurt or killed as a result is acceptable collateral damage. Well, it's not acceptable to Donald Trump, and we're shutting it down, and we'll never apologize for it. Thank you.